Hello and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Sanam Shantier. Coming up on our programme this week, several nights of unrest between Israeli police and Palestinians in Jerusalem. This after barriers were put up outside Damascus Gate, blocking access to Muslims during Ramadan. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe is sentenced to another year in prison after being found guilty of propaganda against the regime in Iran. The British-Iranian citizen has already spent 5 years in jail on separate spying charges. Plus, the hijab, virginity, and when should a woman get married? Well, these are just a few topics we'll be tackling with Palestinian-American blogger Faiza Rammuny. Now, several nights of tension followed by calm in Jerusalem. This after police brought down barriers that had been erected to block Palestinians and Israeli Arabs from accessing the city's mosques. As France 24's Shirley Sidbon explains, the escalation led to Hamas firing rockets over Israel.
These Palestinian and Israeli Muslims are celebrating the removal of the barriers outside Damascus Gate, a plaza leading to the old city. Every year during Ramadan, thousands gather on these stairs every night after praying in the old city's mosques. This year, Israeli authorities said they would ban people from sitting here, which is part of what triggered daily clashes. Now, the barriers are out of their way.
Since the beginning of Ramadan, the occupation decided to impose a new reality around Damascus Gate. This new reality doesn't match the needs of the city's residents.
Local police authorities believe that setting up the barriers in this highly sensitive site was a mistake. Since Ramadan began, tension escalated daily, fueled by other events. TikTok videos showing Arabs slapping Jews, followed by protests of Jewish far-right militants Thursday, some of whom clashed with Arab protesters and some reportedly attacking random Arab residents. On Friday, the violence spread to the Gaza Strip, from which dozens of rockets were fired towards Israel, and the Israeli military striking back targets operated by Hamas. To avert the situation spiraling out of control, local officials decided to take away the barriers, hoping the violence would lower and eventually stop. Since Sunday night, isolated incidents erupted in Jerusalem. 5 rockets are reported to have been fired from the Gaza Strip.
At least 82 people were killed in a fire at a hospital that was treating coronavirus patients near the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. More than 100 others were also injured in the blaze, which was reportedly sparked by an exploding oxygen cylinder. The Iraqi Prime Minister has since suspended the nation's health minister and various other officials over this incident. This in a country where hospitals had already been ruined by sanctions, conflict and oversight, even prior to the global health crisis. Over to Iran, where British-Iranian dual national Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe has been sentenced to yet another year in prison. She's also been blocked from leaving the country over the next 12 months, this on charges of propaganda against the regime. Now, the 43-year-old was previously in prison on spying charges, which she and her employer, the Thomson Reuters Foundation, have repeatedly denied. Some observers and rights groups call this hostage-taking as a foreign policy by Iran.
Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe is set to spend another year in prison. This after an Iranian revolutionary court found the aid worker guilty of conducting propaganda activities against Iran. In addition to the sentence, she has also been banned from leaving the country for a year. It's another setback for British authorities, who are demanding that Zaghari-Ratcliffe be freed. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has hit back against the ruling.
I don't think it's right at all that Nazanin should be sentenced to any more time in jail. I think that it was wrong. I think it's wrong that she's there in the first place, and we'll be working very hard to secure her release from Iran. The government will not stop. We will redouble our efforts.
Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe was first arrested while on holiday in Tehran back in 2016. Authorities handed her a 5-year sentence on charges of plotting to overthrow the Iranian regime, allegations she has always denied. Efforts to secure her release were further complicated in 2017 when the then British Foreign Minister Boris Johnson said she had been training journalists in Iran, a comment that fueled tensions. She was released from house arrest last month after completing her 5-year sentence, but just after she was freed, she was ordered back into court on new propaganda charges. Her husband Richard has long campaigned for Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe's return to the UK, ramping up pressure on the British government to do more. He believes his wife is being used as leverage by Iran to secure money owed to them by Britain, a debt dating back more than 40 years.
Now, this week's guest is Faiza Rammuny, a Palestinian-American blogger who tackles regional taboos with humour. She takes on topics like the importance of reputation in Middle Eastern society, judgment of women based on a different value system to men, pressure to get married, the hijab, and you guessed it, virginity. Let's take a look. Faiza, thank you so much for being with us. Clearly, there is a massive need for a voice like yours for many women across the region who have to live up to certain expectations, who face restrictions in their daily lives.
First of all, thank you so much for having me. And I recognize that my work has been a voice for many who were otherwise voiceless. You know what I mean? And I recognize that's not just the Muslim women or the Muslim Arab, or as I nickname Musrab women and men. It had almost a ripple effect where it connected with people from different cultures, different faiths, different sexual orientations, people who were really just looking for identity and understanding and wanting a better relationship with their family, dating issues. So I feel like my work has been a great playing ground for people to recognize that Muslims are like everybody else. You know, we're human beings just going through our journey.
Absolutely. And you're dealing with quite sensitive topics there. How do you manage to strike a balance? Because we are still very much speaking about a society that's largely conservative.
Oh, absolutely. And the balance comes in education, right? I mean, you find a balance when you educate yourself. And I recognize that many of the conservatives are conservatively cultural. And there's a difference between the culture and the faith. So I recognize that they're coming from a cultural perspective that contradicts many things that the faith says. I mean, the faith has an abundance of freedom for women that's not in the culture. So I think education is the fine line between finding your balance and not. And it's been literally what's been for me, the balance is in educating myself. What is truth? You know, asking that like long question, like Pontius Pilate and, you know, Johnny Cash, what is truth? I asked myself, what is truth? And I went to go seek that truth. And that truth found my balance. So balance lies in education.
Education is important, but, you know, some may say that this is possibly a society that's still in part hypocritical as well. So, for instance, I'm talking about the fact that the community doesn't really like to talk about, let's say, cosmetic treatments, but these procedures are still very much prevalent in the region.
Girl, it extends further than cosmetic surgery, I will say. You know, it's like that whole thing. Like, I've heard the whole story, like, oh, my chest has got bigger because I put za'atar in zayt, khalas done. It's like, I've heard that before, but, you know, like, it starts with cosmetic surgery. Like, it's so much deeper than that, like all societies, right? There's so much hypocrisy there. But I recognize that there is a lot of taking the hypocrisies and turning it into comedy that has been able to humanize us, that shows that we are like everybody else. Yes, we're hypocrites, but who aren't hypocrites, right? And so there's a lot of society that has issues like that. But I think that the Musrab world has been so good at hiding it more. And so putting it into the surface and showing the world like, hey, here we are through comedy, through words, has been able to, again, humanize us. So those hypocrisies, looking at it from a different perspective, we've used it to my advantage.
Faiza, part of what you do is giving advice, of course, and I want to do a quick fire round segment with you. I'll pose a dilemma to you experienced by some women in the region, and I'd like you to give us advice on each and every one of them. The only condition is that you only have 10 seconds to respond. Are you ready?
Ready, go.
Let's go. It's Ramadan now. You're not fasting. You're asked about it, and in comes the judgment. What do?
Not their business. Move on with my day, take the hasanat, and go on.
What's a hasanat?
Good deeds. Take the good deeds.
Okay, you don't wear the hijab. Your relatives, your friends are judging you, speaking about you. How do you handle it?
not their business. Take the hasanat, the good deeds, keep walking.
There you go. Okay, you're above 25, you're not married, no children in sight, pressure's piling. You are, in your own words, expired.
Yeah, and in my own words, fabulous. So I'm not going to care about that. Move on.
Okay, and what if your family want to arrange a suitor and you're not very interested?
Then I say no. That's it. I mean, it's not forced pressure or guilt. You can't force pressure or guilt a girl to meet him. So I'm not interested. Move on. But my family's given up on me, girlfriend. They've given up.
Here. Last one. Sex before marriage. Keep it under wraps or out and proud?
Be a Muslim about it. Keep it private. Nobody's business. If it's exposed and people find out, wear it loud and proud. But otherwise, keep it private. They don't deserve the truth.
Now, lastly, and very briefly, Faiza, if you can, one of the main topics that comes up time and time again for Middle Eastern women is the issue of hijab, even in the West. It's a topic that's especially prevalent here in France. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it's prevalent and it comes up time and time again because men keep talking about the subject of what women can and cannot wear. So I think it's time for men to remove themselves from the conversation and allow women to dictate what they want to wear and what they don't want to wear. And that's not just in the West, that's in the East, the North, and the South, right? So it's more about let a woman decide what she wants to wear. Let's be like, even in the Quran, it talks about a woman has a right in Surah al-Hijab, is where they usually tell you to go, Surah Nur, Surah al-Hijab, right? And they'll tell you to go to Ayah 59. And I encourage you to go from 59 to 61, where it clearly states that if a woman owning to human weakness does not practice that modesty, Allah is oft forgiving and most merciful, right? So God understands that the most important thing is how a woman carries herself, who she is, the internal battle as it is with anybody. And so let a woman decide if she wants to wear the hijab, then she wears it. And if she doesn't want to wear the hijab, then she doesn't want to wear it. It is a woman's decision, period.
A woman's decision it is. Faiza Rammuny, known to many as expired and fabulous on social media, of course. Thank you so much for speaking to us here on Middle East Matters. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. Likewise.
And of course, thank you for watching this edition of the programme. Stay tuned.
Laurent